Chris, can we play an imagination game, you and I?
Yes, I'm
Let,
ready.
let's pretend like you're a tailor and you make nicely tailored suits. Let's pretend that that's what you're up
Okay.
to in the world. And I said, hey, I want you to tailor me a suit, and I want you to tailor a suit for a compadre of mine. Would they be the same? Would they be identical?
No.
Why not?
Well, what are you? You're like 6'5".
Not quite 6'5". I'm
For
tall,
starters,
sure.
not
I'm
everybody's
tall, sure.
6'5". You know, and Lisa is what, 5 foot even, 5'1"? I don't know.
No, she's my height. She walks tall, dude.
I just suddenly imagined if Lisa was 6'5" and Kason was 5'1". That's a funny thought.
Oh, well, Kason wouldn't let me have stuff behind me.
Yeah.
It was distracting. It distracts.
There
Yeah.
was something on the wall that I had to take down.
Remember, I used to have the whole bookcase behind me, and now I just got, we're moving around, so I'm actually in the back bedroom now. So I've just got Halloween gimmicks behind me. I hope they don't distract you too much, Kason.
I'm so distracted
Like
right now. I can't.
of you.
The fact that you have horns growing out of your head is also kind of, getting me there too. So.
Yeah, the spirit of Halloween, man. We got to keep it real at truthconduit.com, man.
I can make the background red if that helps and be like, ooh,
Ooh.
spooky.
All right,
Welcome to hell.
Intro here. There we go. Hello, friends. Chris McMillan here. This is another episode of truthconduit.com. Today, I'm with the two founders of WealthBattle.com, Kason and Lisa. So WealthBattle is an educational community. It's dedicated to helping freedom-minded people escape the rat race. Now, Lisa and Kason, they not only talk the talk, but they also walk the walk, and they are doing a great job building a community, helping people do exactly that, escape the rat race, because they understand the basic concept of by adding value, you create more value around you. So how are you guys doing today? How's your fall? How are you enjoying the fall? What's going on? How are y'all feeling?
I'm great. Apparently the fall for you guys is warm, which is odd. But yeah, it's nice and crisp here.
You're up in Delaware right now.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, you get the four seasons up there. I can't imagine. Kason, have you ever experienced four seasons in your life?
The Four Seasons Hotel? Why, yes, I go there every evening. Oh, what do you mean? What do you mean?
I mean, when it actually gets, cool in October, and then snowy white winter in December, January, and then green, spring. Have you ever experienced that? I have not.
I mean, when traveling, sure, but good old Texas boys, nah, we like it mild all the way until it's summer, then we melt.
Yeah. Yeah, because Kason and I, we're very near each other. We're both in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Lisa comes in. She appears every once in a while. She honors us with her presence, but for the most part, she's up in New England. And we all know each other through various forms of the Rebel Alliance. So if
Your empire needs you. We definitely support the empire anyway.
So softball question, what is Wealth Battle, and why should anyone listening who isn't familiar with it drop everything and go and check it out? However you guys want to take it.
Kason, go right ahead.
Okay, cool. So wealthbattle.com is a community that we're building that helps people become more autonomous in their life. People that aren't pushed around by circumstances. People that aren't struggling in the rat race every single day going, oh, I hate my job. Have you ever heard the word, I have to do this to make ends meet? Have you ever heard, like, I don't want to do this, but I keep doing it because I don't know other options that are available to me? What we're looking to do is help people escape the rat race and improve their financial stability by sharing information, by playing financial games together, by building a community that helps lift each other up. It all kind of started whenever I invited a friend down to Anarchapulco, which is where I met Lisa at, and they said, I can't afford it. And I was like, what do you mean you can't afford it? It's like a flight in a hotel, and like you only live once and you're going to die one day, and that's going to be sad. So then whenever Lisa and I hooked up, it was like, hey, we could help people with this. Like we kind of have our own specialties, our own silos of information. Let's open up the gates and let people in and take their fill. So that's how wealthbattle.com got started.
So Lisa, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I was also kind of doing my own thing. And then when Kason came along, it became way more fun. So I think we take the spookiness out of wealth and money and just talk about practically how do we have the lives that we want to live and how do we do it together. So it's fun. And a lot of what we talk about is simple. It's not trying to do these like fancy sleight of hand things. It's just honest, simple things. And we like to share the tools and we live it. Live it every day. That's why we're all so happy.
Hold on. You mean wealth and money are separate?
Totes. Yeah. Yeah. Wealth can be all kinds of stuff. Like you're bringing wealth to my life right now, Chris, with those
adding value.
Yeah. Yeah. There's all sorts of value. So, and we've noticed in the community that people recognize that as we play together, like everything comes out. It's like we find different ways to help each other and how to engage in each other's lives.
Yeah, so you have got so many activities going on. You mentioned the games. For starters, what's that about? What do you guys play? What's the forum that you guys use, and what do people get out of that?
So currently, we are playing once a month. We're playing Robert Kiyosaki's board game Cash Flow. So I used to play these games with the real estate investors group, and these are high level real estate investors, big time players like Robert Kiyosaki. And we would play his game with him. And it's just a game. People think that like games are just games, but these are people that are successful in what they do and they learn and play together all the time. So we used to host some in-person games and then realized that if we made it virtual, then we can include the whole global community. And so we brought it to a lot of people. So anyone is welcome to show up. Right now we're playing once a month. You can play, you could watch. And then if you show up in successive months, it's amazing like how you can develop yourself.
The cash flow game. So it focuses mostly, from what I understand, on assets versus liabilities, right? Is that
yeah, so you're working with a financial statement. So you learn how to navigate a financial statement. And the idea is to get out of the rat race. So in the beginning, you only have active income. You're trading time for money with a salary. And what we want is to increase our passive income so that our passive income is greater than our expenses. Because in that case, we're not dependent on a job. We're not dependent on someone else. And so the game is going through the process of evaluating different deals and choosing to do them or not. Having to pay for things that don't bring us money, like they call them doodads, and then watching the market conditions. And I think people learn about their own habits. They learn about how they think about money and wealth, how they think about investing, whether they're savers or debtors. And they start to become aware of their notions of how the world works and how they have to play in the world. And we can kind of break those open when you realize, like, if you can't do the deal yourself, like you've got friends, like what can your friends contribute? How do you leverage each other? And it becomes a much, much bigger game. And then you can bring that directly into life.
So Kason, do you do that? Do you play cash flow with them, or is that Lisa's specialty?
Oh, it's super fun to help host with Lisa. She is the energy behind the game, and I just kind of like watching what she's teaching people through play, right? So like just at this last game we played last on the I think it was the 19th, basically like a week ago or so, and I took down some notes of what people were saying that they learned at the end of the night. So I would just pull up my notes while we were talking about it. So somebody wrote, I learned tonight about or they said, and I wrote down, I learned about the art of the deal, keeping in mind that every deal requires underwriting. This is a person that in the game, they heard a deal that was offered in the game because you can purchase deals in the game. And he said, yeah, that doesn't sound good to me. It sounds like a really bad deal. Hey, anybody want to buy this? And everybody was kind of taken aback. And so there was like this little mini coaching session that kind of went on that was like, hey, why would somebody be interested in that if you had just proclaimed like this is a terrible deal? He's like, I wonder how my language is coming through in everyday communication. So then he changed it on the very next one to like, this isn't for me at this time because I'm not ready for this, but maybe somebody else might be ready for this now. And I would let this go in return for X, Y, and Z, like inside the game. And just seeing that shift, I'm like, dude, this directly translates to this particular individual who has his own little freelance thing. This directly translates to how is he going to communicate with clients? How is he going to communicate with vendors and referral partners and all this stuff that can like actually make his life better? So it's a lot better of a game to play than, I don't know, Call of Duty, or some shoot 'em up. It's like this is giving you the skills that you can take forward. And that's kind of one of the main things. It's like, what's one thing you learned today? How can you figure out those big nuggets, those big takeaways, and implement them on a long enough time scale?
And the beauty of what you just described is it was so unexpected. You get the game, you expect to get some value, but then when things like that come up, it makes it all worth it for everybody, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. So a lot of people come in and they think I'm here to play this game and win the game, right? And that's kind of like life. Like I'm here to come and do this job and get the paycheck. But it's like, what intangibles can you gather from that? What can you arm yourself? What can you put into your offense or defensive arsenal to carry forward with you, right? So if you're paying attention, it's not what can I do when it's my turn? Like in the context of the game, it's how can I move whenever it's not my turn, whenever the authority has not allowed me to do so. In the same way that translates directly to life. Whenever life starts beating up on you in some way or another, how do you keep moving forward? How do you take what looks like trash and turn it into treasure? How do you turn an upset customer into a new opportunity? How do you take someone's frustration and turn it into a business?
And as we're playing, each player discovers these things for themselves and shares it. And that's where we get a lot of progress because people share it. And then it's like, now we've all got that nugget. And it's all through the discovery process of playing.
Lisa's on to something here, because something that's really prevalent in the, let's call it the freedom-minded circle, is like, oh, I'll just watch another video. Oh, I'll just read another book. Oh, I'll just investigate this other, rabbit hole. And there's a whole lot of like intake, a whole lot of yum, yum, yum information coming in, but not a whole lot of, let me go do that in the world. Let me go put that into practice. Let me go make a change to my life. So this is one of those kind of kinesthetic models of learning where somebody can actually do a thing and then like, oh, I remember doing that because it was fully engaging me. It wasn't just like me listening to a lecture or me listening to a seminar or whatnot. So it's really like an integrative way of teaching and sharing.
Thought, emotion, action, and that's the process. Thought, emotion, action. Without the action part, what good is all this knowledge? You have to implement it. You could argue that's the same as grammar, logic, rhetoric. It's not the trivium unless you implement all three parts. The rhetoric has to be the expression of the knowledge or the action taken on it. Is what you just described, and that's been something on my mind, is kind of the mindset and consciousness of things. I've been going down, focusing on that a lot lately, and so it's something that kind of segues to my next question. You've touched on it, the mindset of people. What because it was I think it was last year, Lisa, you had a guest on at wealthbattle.com. Her name was Sarah something, and she really focused on the relationship, the mindset with money. What kind of mindsets of people holds people back, and when it comes to wealth, and what kind of mindset propels them forward?
So there's a lot to that. I think that money is such a big conversation in people's heads, and they don't always recognize it. And I think that there's some guilt involved with it, whether they think that they're not doing enough, they're not successful enough, they're not demonstrating enough, or that we shouldn't need money. And so why should I have it if someone else doesn't have it? Or, that the world should look a certain way. And then there's like scarcity mindset, which is a huge thing where people try to either squirrel away as much as they can, or they spend it all because they have it and they want to be able to live their lives and they're not worried about anything but right now. The future will deal with that later. It's like we see a little bit of everything. Everyone's got their own issues around money. But generally it's something that doesn't allow them to think in the world of abundance. And so what we try to talk about is not that you want to accumulate a lot of money, because just having a big pot of money isn't actually useful. It's like having a big giant mound of knowledge. If you don't do anything with it, what does it matter? So how do we actually generate value ongoingly? What does that look like? And we're always doing underwriting too. In order to generate value, we need to know what deals we're getting involved with, what our role is, what our responsibility is, what our participation is. But what we're looking for is to just have an eye for abundance and continually generating that value. And so understanding that there's going to be a pathway, like where are you today? What does it look like today? And like, what is the life that you want to live? How do you get there? And that you don't have to do it alone. Like this is not a I win and you lose. It's not a zero-sum game. And that's one of the gems of cash flow. It's like we're all here. We could all win. We could all benefit. There's plenty of abundance for all of us. It's just going to be a slightly different game for each of us. We don't have to play the same game. It's not like it's real estate or bust. We all have our own specialty. We have our own interests. So build that into something that generates value for you and your family.
For me, it all starts with the simplest phrase. And in my case, it was Dan Locke who said it, but I'm sure it came from a lot of other people. And it simply is, you switch. Instead of saying, I can't afford it, you switch that around and say,
how can I afford it?
How can I afford it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Whenever you said mindset, I was like, this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to be like, the mindset that holds so many people back is I can't, yeah. Instead of how can.
And these really are all tools. Yeah, it's like, how do we use these tools? There's nothing inherently good or bad about any of them. They're just tools. So how do we use the tools in a way that's helpful?
You guys have got your specializations. You know, Lisa, you've got your thing. Kason, you've got your thing. And then there are areas where you guys come together and you're kind of equal on both fronts. So Kason, in the Wealth Battle community, what's your specialty, man? I know.
You could call me a budgeting nerd. You could call me the budgeting nerd. I love budgeting. It gives me heart highs. It makes me happy. It brings such joy because I think a lot of people make decisions based on feelings, right? Like you were saying with thought, emotion, action. They stick with the emotion part and they're like, this feels good, I'm going to do it, or this doesn't feel good, so I'm not going to do it. And it's like, well, this even pops up while we're playing the game. It's like, well, why would you do that or why would you not? Like, let's just run the numbers. Let's look at it. Let's evaluate this using some intelligence. And we go through and it's like, you can do this now. You have a whole new world of opportunity. I think one of the big mistakes, because whenever I say budgeting, anytime I say that, people go, oh, budgeting, that sucks. That's like scarcity mindset and blah, blah, blah. And the way most people do it, I totally agree. It would be the equivalent, like I like to imagine like I'm driving, right? And the way most people budget is like they just look at the rear view mirror the entire time and they're only looking backwards and they're like, I spent this much last month. Well, I'll do that next month and I'll do that next month. They never look ahead. They never look down the road. And to me, a budget is a tool, much like a GPS that you say, where am I now? Where am I going? And it gives you the turn-by-turn directions to help you get there. Okay. So a simple example would be like, I want to do holiday gifts in December. Okay, you want X amount for that, whatever X is. Well, how many months do you have until then? You have so many months. We'll just divide X by that many months. That's the shortest route to get there. Kind of like if I'm going from one place to another, take this turn, then that turn, that's the shortest route. There are other routes to get there. It just takes a little bit longer. And that's okay. It's not necessarily bad to take longer. Maybe you wanted to stop by and visit a friend on this road trip or what have you. That's totally cool. In the same way, a budget should allow you to go, you know what? I thought that this was really going to be important to me and I wanted to do this thing by this time, but this other thing popped up and it's such a good thing or it's such an important thing that I really want to do that first. And I think that's where people go astray in budgeting land. They're like, I just have to do this because I told myself I would. It's like, well, that doesn't really help. Like, let's be flexible with life. Things change.
What kind of feedback are you getting from the Wealth Battle community, results from the people you've been helping on budgeting?
Yeah. So out of 200 plus budgets now that I've run, there is a couple people that, I can think of one in particular that like he started budgeting and he was like on the paycheck to paycheck cycle, right? And it's just like stress emotionally. Ooh, if something goes wrong at the job, if they put in certain mandates that I don't want to comply with and I have to leave, like I'm really boned. Like this is not going to be good. I'm going to be way up, creek without a paddle. And there was, so we got to talking, built a budget, And then he worked with me on the budgeting side for a little bit. And then he talked with Lisa about what she specializes in. And now, like, his budget is flush. He has kind of a runway, and he's building something for the future, which I will now softball this over to Chris and Lisa to talk about what's next.
Yeah, because I just want to personally vouch the budgeting tools that you've given us have certainly helped. We're still learning them and using them, but it's definitely helps things balance.
It's a practice.
Out. Yeah.
It's a practice like a martial art. You engage with it and you get better over time. It's not like one nugget. It's like something you continually involve yourself in, which is one of the things we do with everybody at Wealth Battle. They continuously involve themselves in budgeting. We have little small groups that meet every couple weeks, and they go, how's budgeting? And that sort of thing. Like, holds people accountable, teaches new skills. Like, okay, you have mastered the karate chop. Now for the karate kick. I don't know, obviously.
It's the idea that have every dollar work for you. That's something that I had never thought of before until I met you, Kason, and you're like, make every dollar work for you. And it's there on the sheet. What are you doing with it? Where is it going to go? How is it going to help you? That was the game changer for me when it comes to budgeting.
No unemployed dollars on Chris's watch. No, they're all working for you. They're paying for groceries. They're paying for this and that. They're making your life better. That's the goal.
Kason gave me permission to spend money, because giving every dollar a job also means like, hey, it's okay. You've allocated them to something that you want. It's okay to spend them.
Yeah. The what is it called? I've drawn the blank. YNAB. Yeah. YNAB.
You need a budget?
Yeah, you need a budget. I laughed so hard the first time. YNAB. Okay, how do you spell that? And it's like, the acronym for you need a budget.
You need a
Fantastic.
budget. Yeah.
Lisa, what about you? What's your specialty in the Wealth Battle community? What's going on there?
BYOB.
Yes.
Yes.
Become your own banker, right?
Yeah.
So just for reference, I'll reference it later, but anyone listening, look back at my Truth Conduit episode 33, where I did interview Lisa in more detail about the awesome thing she's about to say. Sorry, go on.
So essentially, I utilize whole life insurance to build up cash value so that you can bank yourself. And the reason that it's super cool is that the IRS does not tax insurance. So everyone's like, isn't insurance a scam? And it's like, we question all things except we buy into certain things that we're told. And that happens to be one of them. We all think that insurance is a scam. But if you look at the wealthy, the banks and the corporations, they're all utilizing it. So why are they? Like, let's be more like them. So we build up these policies to have cash value. And there's this magical piece of it that when you want, you can borrow against your cash value. The life insurance company writes you a check from their general fund. Your fund stays intact and it earns tax-free interest and dividends while your money is doing another job. So now you're not giving your dollar one job, like Kason says in budgeting, but it can do multiple jobs. It's pretty amazing. So you can actually take advantage of compounding. There's nowhere really in the world that I've seen that you can take advantage of compounding interest uninterrupted. Banks used to give you interest for storing your money in a savings account, but that's not really much of a thing of any significance. And as soon as you take those dollars and you put them somewhere else, they're not working for you anymore.
Yeah, I definitely sleep better at night because we have this. And like I said, I will link our previous interview and conversation below. I link everything below because that episode has got all the links and references that for people who want to contact you or look into the books and the literature behind all of that. But for me, it was amazing. When I met you, Lisa, it was some passive comment you made on Discord. You know, we're all hanging out and you mentioned something about how I used whole life insurance to become my own banker. And, you know, and you weren't even talking to anybody specific. But anyway, I jotted that down. I thought, I'm going to ask Lisa about that later. Anyway, I did, and now I just sleep better at night having that policy. My question for you is, when you're discussing this, how to use whole life insurance to become your own banker, what's the biggest objection that people give, or reluctance or hesitation about doing that?
So I think that in the beginning, there's some fear about not knowing what's going to happen into the future. So how will I fund something for my whole life? So that's one of them. But they've been told by TV personalities that it's expensive. And we're going to do a series on calculators, like actually doing the math, but you could see just how expensive it is. We just don't often know how to account for the expenses we're paying in mutual funds or assets under management. There's all sorts of expenses all over the place. Real estate fees, when you purchase a real estate, like they're pretty substantial. So we can show you on an annual basis exactly how much cumulative premium you've paid and when you start earning more than you have ever paid in for the entirety of your policy. So I think the expense part of it, it seems like an expense before, our brain can click into, hey, I'm actually building cash value that I can utilize. It's liquid and accessible. I can utilize it. And I have a death benefit. So I'm creating legacy for my family. And I think legacy is something we don't talk about much anymore. But imagine if you can multiply your money into a much larger benefit that will be passed on to your beneficiaries with no government intervention. And so even if you don't think you have a life insurance need, there's no one that needs your money in the event that you actually die. I think it's kind of our duty to increase the amount of money that's outside the taxable system.
Amen.
It's not just no government intervention. It's like we're meddling with the taxable system by removing it under their noses, like kind of in the open, like, hey, can't touch this money anymore now, can you, Uncle Sam? Wouldn't that be nice to get a piece of this pie? They're like, that smells really good. I want a piece of that. It's too bad it predates the IRS, baby.
Yeah, and you're using their own tricks against them. Or not against them, but you're just using their old tricks, that this is...
Yeah, it's not even a trick. It's just the simple way that it works. Farmers have been using this for almost 200 years. It was just a common thing that happened, and people lost sight of it. In the 80s, interest rates were high, and so people were trying to put their money into the market, like really funneling their money into the market, and that changed the whole industry, and people got distracted pretty quickly.
So what about the results? So in the Wealth Battle community, you give lectures on this, and you're helping sign people up for these policies. What kind of results or feedback are you getting on that?
Yeah, so we do educational events. I'll spend time one-on-one with people to figure out what are your goals, because everyone's policy will look slightly different. Some people are really concerned about a death benefit. Some people are really concerned about early cash value. Some people are concerned about longevity. So we'll work out the details for each person and then create a policy that works for them. And I can help everyone set that up. And I think it's brought people a lot of peace of mind, because now they know that they have an opportunity fund, which means that they can see opportunities now. So one of the things that we've noticed is that people were unaware of opportunities because they didn't think it was something they could participate in. So they were just things that occurred in the world, not for them. And now it's like we try to turn everything into an opportunity, and then let's share it with each other, because maybe I can't do it alone, but maybe the three of us could leverage each other's funds and do it together. So I think we're seeing more and more people recognizing that they have a lot more power in their own lives and can make choices for themselves. And then they're sharing it with their families. They're like, hey, I see this benefit. Like, let's all participate. Let's spread this wealth.
Chris, can we play an imagination game, you and I?
Yes, I'm ready.
Let's pretend like you're a tailor and you make nicely tailored suits. Let's pretend that that's what you're up to in the world. And I said, hey, I want you to tailor me a suit, and I want you to tailor a suit for a compadre of mine. Would they be the same? Would they be identical?
No.
Why not?
Well, what are you? You're like 6'5".
Not quite 6'5". I'm
For starters,
tall, sure.
not
I'm
everybody's
tall,
6'5". And Lisa is what, 5 foot even, 5'1"? I don't know.
No, she's my height. She walks tall, dude.
I just suddenly imagined if Lisa was 6'5" and Kason was 5'1". That's a funny thought. Okay, sorry. No, it would not be the same. No, obviously very few people. I mean, yeah, there's some people, but no, obviously it would be different because you've got different statures, different needs, different wants, and just that different everything.
Totally. And in the same way, somebody's budget and somebody's opportunity fund are going to be tailored specifically for where they are now, where they want to go, and what that path looks like for them. And we can make some allowances for like, oh, I want to look kind of like this guy or kind of like this gal. I want to follow the trend of the fashion, right? You could do that, or you could be like, okay, well, what does that really boil down to on like first principles?
And then there's commonalities that we all get. These are just like cool side benefits. So for opportunity funds with life insurance, we deal with private mutual funds, which means that these are private contracts. Nobody knows they exist. So unless you want people to know that you have this and you have money in these funds, they don't know. So it doesn't affect your debt to income ratio if you take out loans. It's protected from legal action. Like there's all sorts of additional features and protections that are in place because they're private contracts. There's guarantees involved in them. They're baller.
Okay.
They're baller, Chris. Did you get that?
Baller.
That's a jotter downer. They're baller, dude.
This is why it's not just individuals that use them, like corporations use them, banks use them. Like this is a big deal.
Yeah, doesn't Walmart take out a policy on each of their cashiers or something? Or was that a
So they
urban legend?
used to, because think about it. Let's say why did they come up with the greeter? Do they really need a greeter? So for minimum wage, they could hire just about anybody and they can get a life insurance policy on their life. And that person is guaranteed to die, right? Everyone's going to die. They're guaranteed to die before the corporation. The corporation's going to outlive them. So it was a way for them to start leveraging people's lives. Like want to build a corporation. There's so many ways to do it. And this didn't last too long because the families had issue with that, even though each employee signed off and said it was okay. But yeah, that was one of their strategies. But now in business, you can do it on key employees. So anyone that's vital to the business, you can get protection in place in the event that something happened to them and build up cash value.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that people make? This is another general question for both of you. What would you guys say some of the most common and biggest mistakes people make when it comes to dealing with money and wealth? I mean, we kind of touched on the mindset earlier, but is there anything else that comes to mind?
I think there's an order of operations to this. A lot of people want to jump to like, oh, I want to put all my money in the stock market and I want to grow and I never want to have to work again. Like a lot of people jump to like speculation. And we've come up with a framework to not only like, here's a rough roadmap that most people could follow. You could say IBORSE, IBOARSE, 7 steps, right? But it boils down to an order of operations. First comes I for income. Then comes B for budgeting. So you have money coming in, then you're giving that money, or I should say currency for this audience, so that currency a job. Then, now that you've given it jobs and you've determined what you needed to do, now it's time to start building an opportunity fund. Because let's say that the biggest opportunity in the world lands on your lap tomorrow, Chris, and it's $1 million to do the deal, but you know you'll make more than $1 million back. You know, if you can't come up with that $1 million, that's kind of a problem. So build up that opportunity fund, start building that up, right? Then participate in ascending cash flows. What is an ascending cash flow? A for ascending cash flow. Well, you start off with something that's you control completely, like an opportunity fund, like some form of savings, some form of I own this completely and no one can tell me what to do with this but me, full control. Then you might do something where you have to have a counterparty, such as a customer or a client. Maybe that's starting a little business. Maybe that's creating some kind of lease agreement for some equipment or something to that effect. There's a little bit of counterparty risk there, but you can still turn that up or turn that down, like the volume knob on a speaker system. You can go, oh, I want a little bit more or a little bit less, and you can put more in and get more out. Or if you're getting a little busy, you can put less in and get less out and be okay with that trade-off. Then you might move into something like, like a hard money loan. This is where I'll pivot to Lisa if you want to go through some different ideas on what the rest of IBORSE kind of looks like here.
Well, I mean, ultimately, we want to reduce the amount of time that we are spending trying to accumulate these dollars and leverage them into things so that we can escape the rat race. And that can look like any number of things. And at this point, I've forgotten your actual question.
Biggest mistakes, the most common mistakes.
Yeah, so we have this framework because it's often shown as a pyramid. You know, it's like we're thinking Maslow here. And so people are trying to achieve the peak, but really the peak is more like the thing that you should have the least of, because it's at the tippy top. There's not very much of it.
Like the food pyramid, which we all trust implicitly.
I was going to say that, and then I was like, oh. So you don't want to start at the top of the pyramid. You don't want to start with speculation. You don't want to start in the market, because that's where you have the least amount of control, but the most risk. And most people think like, hey, with great risk comes great reward. It's like, nah, I think there's something more about responsibility and reward, not risk and reward. So that's the big thing. People spend all of this energy earning money, and then they throw it into something in someone else's hands, expecting that they'll take better care of their money than they will of their own. And so what we're trying to teach people is, hey, if we give you the tools, you can make choices for yourself where you can actually do the math, and there's a better chance that you'll be able to leverage that money into something that will net you something much greater than if you entrusted someone else with it.
I had another takeaway from that previous game of cash flow. Somebody else said, just because I can buy a stock cheap doesn't guarantee it will go up. This particular person put a whole bunch of money on a really cheap stock. It was like, this is for sale. It's at its historical low. It's at the bottom of the market. You should buy, says the stockbroker. Put all of his money in it, and it never went up. It just stayed right there. And it's just like, oh, are you saying that past performance is not indicative of future outcomes? Oh, snap. They didn't put that disclaimer big enough whenever it came down to your entire retirement. You know, oops.
Yeah. So the entire retirement, we have a lot of people that have their money in the stock market and 401ks and qualified plans, IRAs, thinking that when they retire, they will be all set. And I think that that is a very dangerous position to be in. And they're just hoping, hopes and prayers. So I think that's a big one. And then we have people that actually accumulate wealth and they spend it all buying something like a house. They're like, a house is an asset, but really the house is still costing them money. And they're giving up all of their valuable today currency and giving it to the bank so the bank can make more money off of them instead of retaining it for themselves and living life, doing whatever it is that they would like to do today with it. They hand it over. They also
That's assuming they take a mortgage out. If they were able to pay for it all up front, then it's more of an asset, right?
It's still going to cost money. You still have to rent it. You still have to pay property taxes. There's still maintenance on the house. I mean, there's a lot that's involved in it. But if you take out a mortgage, the bank's giving you their dumb money. You're paying them back slowly over 30 years. So inflation is going to work to your advantage. Your mortgage payment does not go up. So why hand over hundreds of thousands of dollars when you could keep that and actually do something with it, be a contribution?
Wait, everybody stop. We have to define our terms. We've used the words asset, mortgage, and inflation. And I think if those terms are not fully described, people might miss the magic of what we're talking about here.
Exactly. Law of identity. Go for it, Kason.
So Chris, I'm going to pitch it back to you. We're going to put on your imaginary hat for a second, because you said if I had cash and I bought a house cash. Oh yeah, go ahead, get the hat on. Yes,
it's not imaginary. See, I've got my.
Does it think?
It does. It does.
Oh, therefore it is. Okay, great. Okay, so that was a Cartesian joke. All right, so Chris, what would you describe? Put it in like super layman's terms, just because I'll play the dumb one here. What is inflation? Describe inflation to me.
Inflation is, oh man, you put me on the spot. Now I'm nervous.
That's okay. Just explain it as if I was like 5.
When the prices go up because they're printing more money and they're decreasing the value of the currency, right?
Okay. So the value of the dollar in general trends upwards or downwards?
Downwards. It becomes less valuable, so you need more of it to pay for the product. Oh no. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So you need more of it to pay for the product. So
but I would say that the value of the currency is a product of inflation. It is not inflation itself.
Totally.
Just since we're defining it.
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
So now to Lisa, what is a mortgage?
So a mortgage is a way to leverage some money to get much bigger, it's financing to get much more money from some other institution. So in the case of a house, you're mortgaging a house, you would put some money down payment, and the bank would finance the rest of it. That would be the mortgage. And they're going to set the terms for that.
Totally. So they charge a little bit of extra, they give you a lump sum of money. They want that lump sum back, and they charge a little bit of extra that we call interest. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Right on. And then they may have other requirements, but we can leave it at that as simple. And then I would say an asset is something that puts money into your pocket. So Chris, if you put a whole bunch of cash down on a house, does it put money into your pocket?
No, not directly.
Not directly. Okay. What does it do indirectly then?
Well, indirectly, it provides a place, a base of operations to live and to do podcasts with Lisa and Kason.
Hallelujah.
So that's an asset,
Sure. So let's just pretend for a moment that you had a property you wanted to pick up, and it was, I'll use round numbers, $200,000, right? And you could finance that for the course of 30 years. And it would, at the end of it, cost you, let's say, $275,000 or even $300,000. So you're paying like quite a lot in interest. Let's just pretend like that was a thing. Over the course of 30 years, is that dollar worth more or worth less?
I'm not sure, because assuming
based on inflation,
the dollar continues to go down in value. So yeah, it would be worth less.
Okay. Cool. So if we plug those numbers in, you can actually do this yourself at home for those that are watching. You can go to an inflation calculator, and you can go to and type in, let's say 2022 back to like 1992. Okay, so you have 30 years of inflation, and you can calculate what that looks like and see what that looks like. And you can also pull up like a mortgage term today and pretend like you got that same term back in 1992 and see what is the actual cost of this money. It turns out sometimes when you do this, there's a case to say, I'm going to pick this up for 30 years instead of putting all my cash in right now. Because right now, assuming that the government continues to print money, I don't know if I was a betting man. It's a safe
assumption.
If I was a betting man, I might bet on that. Like if somebody was willing to pay me money to make that bet. So assuming that the government continues to print money and the money continues to go down in value over time because the supply is driven up, these are the most expensive, most valuable, most precious dollars you'll ever control today. And tomorrow they'll be worth a little bit less or a lot of bit less. Who knows? Weimar Republic, that happened. You keep on going, that value keeps on going down. But the bank, assuming it's a 30-year fixed mortgage, there's a whole bunch of conversations we should have around that. They continue to ask for the same nominal amount of dollars, not the same value amount of dollars, which theoretically their payment would be going up with inflation at the very least. Does that concept make sense, Chris?
So it may not be a bad idea for some people.
It may not be. And typically there's a pretty strong math argument to be made. But that's where it's like, let's look at the numbers. Let's investigate with a calculator. Let's pull up it's called an amortization calculator on a mortgage. And then it's called a interest rate calculator, inflation calculator on the value of currency. Combine those two, and you can come up with a rough approximation on your own just using free tools online. And then Lisa, she's got some crazy calculators that can give you like historical actual numbers and that sort of thing. You're not trusting the programming online. It's like, here's like the database that you're pulling the data from. It's pretty cool.
That could be another mistake people make, because the word that comes to mind when you're describing that situation is control. I would love, personally, even if getting a mortgage might be long term, the mentality is, but if I pay for it all up front, I own it and I have control over it, even though the numbers may not be the best, that may not be the best way to play that game.
So you have control over some wood, some sheetrock, some stone, some concrete, some plumbing, some copper, right? You have control of those. What do you no longer have control of? Big pile of cash.
Cash.
And which would you be able to leverage for your benefit more? Are you able to like sell off a portion of your house? If like times get rough, it's like, I will give you my master bedroom in return for a pile of money so I may do this thing. Or is it not so easy to do that? And then the cash would have been more, we call it liquid, more spendable.
Right. Like, what if you're like, I want to improve my homestead, or I need more food, but I've given the bank all of my money to live in this structure when I could have been giving them a couple $1,000s a month and kept a couple $100,000. So that control, there's huge opportunity costs with giving up that money and giving it to the bank, and they are sure taking advantage of it.
Yeah, we're talking about a house. I'm thinking another if it's land, however, land that could much more easily be turned into profit, that might be a different case. Like you can't turn your house into a, well, you could, but you know what I mean? If you've got land, you could make money off of it by whether it's through agricultural reasons or whatnot. So I guess it depends what we're talking about, but yeah, we're
Kind of
talking
like
about a
the
house.
suit. Where do you want it to be tailored in? Do you want it to be closely fitting at the hips? How do you want it to be at the shoulders? Like, there's a conversation to be had around that because everything comes with pros and cons. Like, I could easily say, well, that limits you only to your geographic area or people who want to come to your geographic area compared to cash, which you can send to whomever for whatever service or good at present time.
But I think that's what we were talking about with budgeting. There are things that emotionally make us do things, and budgeting helps keep us on track. It's the same with the mortgage. The numbers work out better to have a mortgage. So you might emotionally feel better giving all of your money to the bank somehow, right? It's kind of crazy when you actually say it out loud. Why would we want to give them all of our, but we do. Our everyday looks the same, but we've now given them everything that we have, all of our currency. And we still live in the same house. Nothing's actually changed. So it's an emotional thing. So if you can get past the emotional thing and look at the numbers, you're like, I'd rather keep that while it has value and do something with it.
So in theory, if someone were to take out a mortgage on a house with the long-term intention to just not want that mortgage, to pay it off by selling some land that they might have access to, that may not be the best plan. It might be better to hold on to that land or sell it and keep that cash, possibly.
So you could keep the cash if you think you're going to do something with the cash that will return you more than selling the land in the future. If you're going to hold on to the cash and put it under the mattress and let it lose to inflation, I probably wouldn't do that right now. But otherwise, I think having a long-term mortgage makes sense because you're reducing the amount of money that you have to outlay each month. And if you were to choose at one point to say, I want to pay it off or I want to pay more, you can. It's like sometimes people say, oh, I should get a shorter term mortgage, a 15-year mortgage instead of a 30-year, because look, I save money on interest. Also interesting because it's marketing and we look at the marketing and we believe it. We ask questions again about everything, but then we look at the bank's marketing and we're like, oh, we're paying less money in interest. I'll do the shorter term mortgage. We should actually go through the math because that's not actually the case. But if you pick a shorter term mortgage, your monthly payment is higher. And so if you can't make that monthly payment, you can run into trouble. Whereas if you get the long-term mortgage and you choose to pay more into it, that's a choice. It's not a requirement. So it's really, how do we set ourselves up for success?
Very interesting, because everything that we've just been discussing the last few minutes kind of turns, for the average Joe out there, which is me and a lot of other people, it turns everything upside down on the normal way of thinking, which leads back to my original question of the mistakes commonly made. So yeah, that was well answered. I mean, that was just an example of how people could go into a situation and that maybe not the best way. So in order to make the best decisions and to learn more about this, the best solution is to join WealthBattle.com.
You're not wrong. You are correct, sir.
One more question, and then we'll start to wrap up. What have been some of y'all's biggest influences? Like what resources, books, people, whatnot, kind of were early influences with you guys that kind of started to lead you down to where you are today?
I'd say my biggest one was working for corporate America because it just made me aware of all of the things that didn't seem to work and I didn't quite know why. And that sent me down a path of learning and taking action. And there again, like it's all about implementing the things that you learn. So I think for me, it was mainly on the economic side. I studied Creature from Jekyll Island, and that was a pretty eye-opening. And then I started hanging out with people that were
Hold on. The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
And then once I kind of understood the system, I started studying just how things work. Like I had a 401k for my corporate job, and I wanted to understand how it worked because I'd put so much money into it and it was I was told that this would magically take care of my future. And when I really understood how that worked, I wanted out, but I didn't know where to go. And so then I started studying, like, how do I figure out where to put that money? So I hung out with real estate investors because they were clearly good with money. They were doing something that I wasn't doing. They'd figured some things out that I hadn't. So I started hanging out with them. So it wasn't all just reading and listening to, it was like hanging out with people and getting their experience and their knowledge. And so that's where I was introduced to the idea of leverage, how debt's not always bad, the power of leverage in real estate investing, why so many people get into real estate, and then some of the tools that they utilize, like life insurance. So I started with some books like Be Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash. Then I met Patrick Donahoe, and he wrote a more modern book, kind of Heads I Win, Tails You Lose. And then there's one current one that is, I feel like, more like my voice, which is What Would Billionaires Do by Garrett Gunderson. And then, like, kind of mixing that with, I read this book randomly one day. It was called The Art of Gathering, how you have a responsibility when you host people. What does that look like? Like the whole process. What does that process look like? Because you can't just throw information at people and expect that they will receive it, internalize it, know what to do with it. So it's, how am I responsible for the information that I now have, in implementing it myself, stress testing it myself, and then sharing that knowledge in a way that it's accessible to others and that they can implement it. And then following up with them to remind them how it works when they forget. Because a lot of times we get excited about things, and then when we go to actually utilize them, we had to break our brain to get the concept in the first place. And so sometimes each time we need to be reminded why we're doing it the way we're doing it and how it works. Maybe it's running the numbers every single time. Be like, okay, yes, I'm confirming that this makes sense. So again, it's being in communication with other people. Like, I think what has worked about WealthBattle is that we're doing it together, because wealth and money and currency was a bad word for a lot of people. It's like they'd rather stick their head in the sand or just reject it, but it didn't make life better. And so now it's like, hey, we could do this together. We can figure it out together. We can learn together. We can help each other. We can pull each other up when we're down. And it makes it more fun, because it's like, if I'm doing this by myself, it's like a to-do list. I'm going to throw it away and nobody's watching. So nobody's going to know. And I'm going to be in the same place next year and then in 10 years. So we're ensuring that we're all in better places and continuing on that path.
Very good. Well said. I will definitely link those references you made as well in the show notes for this episode. What about you, Kason?
I won't reference any books that changed my life. There's a whole host of them, but I think kind of how you were saying with TEA, you have to have the action component to it. So I would instead invite people to go to wealthbattle.com, join the Discord server, subscribe for a free month. We have a 30-day free trial, and just come and take some action, start a conversation, and start doing things rather than just learning things and adding more to probably an already pretty taxed, psyche, where it's like, oh, I got to learn another thing. Oh, I got to learn all these things before I take any action. No. Get like the next step, much like a GPS. It's like, you don't need to know every single turn to get to your destination, especially if you've never been there before. If you've been there before, you can be like, how do I get there? Oh yeah, take a left. Okay, got it. But if you've never been there before, I just want to know what's the next step and how long till I do that next step. I want the minimum amount of information to make the most amount of impact on my life. That has served me well, and I would encourage other people to do that.
Very well said. Excellent. Well, cool, guys. We can wrap it up now. Are there any other, you've plugged in wealthbattle.com. Are there any final thoughts or any final plugins you guys want to mention?
Chris, you're a beautiful man.
Yes. With or without the hat?
Both.
Yes.
Simultaneously, in fact. Ooh.
Hold on. Since it's Halloween, I got to do my little...
Got to do the show outro with the hat on. If you take that off, I will be sad. Don't take it off.
Hold on. It goes like
Oh,
this.
okay. Yeah.
Join wealthbattle.com and your life will become awesome.
How was that?
It'll become awesome at WealthBattle.com.
Walking down the street where children play, for them it's just another day. The future's reflected in their parents' faces, who chose to stay on in this place where they were born, went to school, got married, and kids like their grandparents before them did. Got to escape, before it's too late. Although today I could say that I really will miss the when Santa, well, yeah, I was right. Knew what it was like when Santa.
You've been listening to truthconduit.com with Chris McMillan. Go to the subscribe page and sign up to get notifications of the latest posts. And check out the support page to help keep it going.
Yeah, I've got a friend in Jesus Christ. I've got a friend in Jesus Christ, and Krishna and Buddha and my bartender.
Have you found that your skills aren't matching up with the challenges ahead? Here are 19 essential skills for success that school never taught you. Get your free copy by following the link below or visit getautonomy.info/19skills.